Gentlemen from the top rope, we're here live on a Thursday morning, but you're joining us hopefully on a Friday evening. Brad, how you doing today?
Doing great. Hey, we're out here doing it for you guys, for our fans. It was 17 degrees when I was throwing discs this week. And hey, that's okay. I was telling Robbie, I've never took a chunk out of a disc before with ice. So that was a new experience for me. But hey, it was fun. We're out here doing it. It was fun. It's interesting. Much respect for all of our northern folks and our Scandinavian folks playing disc golf right now. A lot of respect because that is not exactly the most easy thing in the world. I feel like my distance is decreased by like 40% in this type of cold.
Yeah, I've put out a couple tweets. I feel like I'm becoming a real member of Foundation over the last few days. Yeah, I've put out a few X's. See, it feels bad because it sounds like, I had a few X's in my life and I just put them out on the road. That just ain't it. But I put out a few posts on X, and one of them was talking about like respect all you winter golfers because I am still doing my distance reps and things like that, and my clock or throw pitch count. There it is. Got there. Of trying to like throw 30 max rips every other day. And so it was like 40 degrees and I grabbed one of my heavy dunes and I went to rip it and I got a hold of it. Like it felt so like it was such a good toss. And then I looked down at my fingers, Brad, and literally like, I don't know what they're called, but you know how you have like the lines on your fingers? The digits is what I've always heard them referred to. But the top 4 digits on all 4 of my fingers were dark purple after it came off my hand. And it's like I bruised every single one of them in one throw. I literally could not pick up a disc comfortably for 2 days. Like it hurt so bad. So
what we're trying to say is if you're not bruising your fingers when you throw, you don't throw far enough.
Right. Apparently when it's cold, but that's what I like. When I did it, I thought, man, this is crazy. I got to throw something out on X. And so I did. And I appreciate that most people gave feedback. I expected several people to do exactly what they did. And they were like, so soft. Bro, I'm not trying to argue that I'm hard. It is, I am indeed soft because y'all, I live in the South. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. Like it is warm here. And
that's okay. That's an advantage. That's not a disadvantage.
Yeah,
that's why.
While and I feel like lots of Minnesota folks and I'm not going to throw Minnesota under the bus because that's God's land. All of the northern folks are like, oh, you got to learn to deal with it. Well, I want you to come deal with trying to play in 110 degree heat with 70% humidity and be like, oh, that's just a normal Saturday. That's just what we do.
Right. Yeah, I feel like Virginia's a nice mix of everything. So, it is cold. It'll be cold for a couple weeks, and then before we know it, it's going to be 60 and beautiful, and that's okay. We're here for that. Wanted to say a special shout out to everybody for all the feedback from last week's episode specifically. That was awesome. I'm glad everyone enjoyed it, and I'm glad we had a good discussion, and I'm glad it's helpful to see like walking through my bag and like kind of like the changes. Because again, I'm not the only one doing this, and I think we're all trying to just be better and make good disc choices. And, especially those of you who want to increase your ratings and compete and be competitive, just making those steady incremental changes and committing to something this year is going to be valuable. So I'm glad. Thanks for all of the shout outs there and all the positive feedback, and just glad you all liked it. We're going to get back to a normal episode this week and bring on someone who's very special to me, a very, very good friend of mine, one of my oldest friends and best friends probably on the planet. And we'll confirm with him, Robbie, but I'm pretty sure I got him into disc golf on a random trip. He came down here and we just started throwing some discs and he kind of fell in love with it. But I may be remembering that incorrectly and that could be a complete lie. But
hey, at least you're admitting that it could be a lie before diving into it. That is a step in the right direction.
Well, I think I just like the story. I want it to be true. So we'll confirm with him. But before we do that, we're gonna have a word from our awesome sponsor, BetterHelp.
Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world and is going through a hard time, therapy can give you tools to approach your life in a very different way. And that is why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more affordable and more accessible, and that is an important mission because finding a therapist can be really hard, especially when you're limited to the options that are in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in my description. It's betterhelp.com/foundation. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, and if you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing with therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. Yeah, therapy is a super great tool. We've worked with BetterHelp in the past, and this is a great resource to use if you're struggling with mental health or just going through a tough time in life. I highly recommend trying this out. Therapy can be a great resource to have. So if you're struggling, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/foundation. Thanks again to BetterHelp for supporting this channel.
Welcoming in to the podcast, Todd. How are you doing today, sir?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good, man. Again, I kind of prefaced the episode by saying, Todd, you're one of my best and oldest friends. So you come in high regard. Glad to finally have you on the podcast. You've been a listener for pretty much the entire time we've done the podcast, which is nice. And we did discuss a little off air because I prefaced by saying I think I got you into disc golf, but I kind of did. So how did you get into disc golf?
You definitely fed the addiction, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Todd lives in West Virginia. Well, yes, you live in West Virginia currently, and so he was very close. When I've told people in Ohio where I'm from, it was very close to West Virginia, so that's how we have a long history. We won't go down that road, but Todd came down to visit in Virginia, and you said you went on a date and played disc golf. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. I definitely didn't win that round either.
Yeah, well, I don't think. You didn't win the relationship, and I'm very glad you didn't. That was not a good route for you. But glad you came down, and we started throwing in the yard. I believe we have a field at my house, and we started just you had one or two. I remember your white DX Beast. Now that I'm recalling,
Yep.
That was one you had, and you were just out there just
Sadly, I've lost that disc.
Yeah. It's sad when you lose that disc you really started with. I mean, I felt that way about my Raptor that I eventually got back, but I remember you're out in the field and you have a pre-existing shoulder injury and you just were cranking your shoulder the entire time.
Pretty much.
Out in the field. Yeah. But hey, you've come a long way. Tell us a little about what's your relationship with disc golf now? What are you doing now? How often do you play? Do you play tournaments? Anything like that?
I haven't played any tournaments yet. I'd like to get into some tournaments this year, just because I like competing. But when it's not 5 degrees outside and a lot of snow, my disc golf bag pretty much stays in the car all the time. So most times during spring and summer, right after work, I'm generally going and playing around before I go home.
Yeah, because I was a little jealous there for a while. I think you were pretty much playing every day for a really long stretch, and I was like, wow, I work in disc golf, and I did play a fourth of that amount. So you definitely have gotten the reps, and you can tell. I mean, I know just from the first time you came down and we talked about disc golf, and the time you came down maybe a year later, you were exponentially better, and we actually got to play together when I came up to Ohio one time too, and you beat me. So. You
barely, but I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, hey, a win's still a win.
That was a dub.
Yeah. So not to get too anecdotal and talk about mine and Todd's relationship, but disc golf wise, Robbie, let's walk him through. Let's get to know him a little bit better from a data perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how long ago was that trip? How long you been playing, Todd?
That was about a year after COVID hit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think it was 2021.
However long that's been now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Probably getting probably approaching 3 years.
Yeah, okay. I would say probably about 3 years. Yep.
Awesome. So if we put you in a field and we said, all right, Todd, we're going to put a basket X amount of feet away from you, how far do you think you can reach it consistently with both a forehand and a backhand?
I would say consistently somewhere between 275 and 300.
Okay. For forehand or backhand?
Both, actually. I started out doing forehand just because my shoulder issues, and that was the only way I could throw it without feeling like I was about ready to lose my arm. So, and then I finally, when I went down to Bradley's and we were throwing in the field, started to learn how to throw backhand. And so it's kind of worked out well for me because I've kind of been able to develop both about the same as I've progressed so far. So,
and I'll probably give him a little bit more credit on his forehand. He throws his forehand a little bit farther than he thinks. He's being modest, but I would say you can probably reach out and touch 350 pretty often if you really wanted to.
Yeah, there's just not a whole lot of courses around here that I have to reach that far out most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
There's certain spots. I mean, certain holes, but
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm still impressive. People that have their game developed to both sides being comparable, always nice. Whereas I think when you end up with one where you're like, all right, I have a 200-foot forehand, but I have a 400-foot backhand, or even vice versa, it's like it gets really hard to develop those skills because you're just, one of them is so much stronger than the other. It's like I would have to lean into this weakness for so long. Like if I have a really good I know personally, I revamped my backhand in 2023, and there were lots of times where I stepped up and I was like, I could and should throw a backhand here because I need to work on it. Oh, my forehand's feeling fine, so I'm just going to chuck the forehand. That feels great. So, Todd, you keep mentioning a shoulder issue. I think something about like the beauty of the podcast, and we have so many people listening. What shoulder issue are you going through? Because there may be other listeners that may have a similar issue right now. And what issues and how'd you get over it?
It more or less leans on like pinched nerves in my shoulder.
Okay.
And really, some days are just better than others. Sometimes you get that wild throw that you throw and it's just off and something gets tweaked and I'm like, that doesn't feel very good. But for the most part, it doesn't really bother me too much anymore once I finally, like I said, figured out how to throw the disc correctly.
Okay. Sick. Well, we talk about throwing the disc. We're talking about a little putting real fast. We put you on the putting green and we're like, all right, Todd, we're going to put the basket away. We're going to go 10 putts from 15 feet, 10 putts from 25, and then 10 putts from 40 feet. How many are you making at each station?
I would say probably 7 out of 10 for 15, probably 5 out of 10 for 25, and on a good day, 3 to 4 out of 10 at 40. But that's where I start to really kind of have a weakness for sure.
Okay.
It's that kind of in between, like, should I putt? Should I not putt?
Totally. Like the regular stroke is not enough to necessarily give it a fighting chance, but a full throw or something from that close feels completely awkward, kind of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And putting is definitely a very temperamental part of my game, I would say. I'm either on or I'm off.
Yeah. I think if we ask people to comment if you feel the same way, this might be our most common video in terms of viewers and whatnot. So
I would assume so. Yeah, it can definitely make or break your day pretty fast.
Yeah, that's
the truth.
It's what makes me, grass is always greener on the other side. As someone who putting is absolutely a strength of mine, I look at all the people who have driving would say like throwing off the tee is one of their biggest strengths, and I'm like, I just feel like the people that's your strength, it's very rarely like a weakness. Whereas because you can be throwing quote bad off the tee and still get some pretty good results. If putting is off, you just don't make it.
Exactly.
There is no, I missed it by 3 inches, but I still hit my line. It's like, no, I missed it by 3 inches and it didn't stay in the basket.
Tough look. Your area of Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. Yep. You could be off 10, 15 feet off the tee and be just fine. Not so much with putting.
Yeah, especially if you're playing in the woods, it's sometimes better to be off by 5 feet than it is to be off by like 5 inches, because 5 inches you're barely kissing a tree, and then she gone.
There are definitely a lot of times where I'm like, I'm kind of glad I didn't end up where I thought I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, like, at least the way I feel like I'm going to gain more strokes by good putting because I'm not throwing super far. Like, I'm not making up strokes by throwing far or throwing super accurate. Now, I have to be somewhat accurate, right? But super accurate versus, like, if I'm like, okay, I'm at 50 feet. If I, like, can nail this putt, I'm gaining a stroke. All right, I'm at 35 feet. I'm gaining a stroke. So I feel like for someone at my stage of the game, and maybe yours too, Todd, and probably everybody, right? But putting's really like your opportunity to gain strokes on people. If you're talking about competitive play or even competing against yourself, like your best round or whatever.
I would definitely agree. Yeah. Cause if you can get pretty accurate from around 40, 50, it definitely opens up a lot more of your game.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a local guy, his name's, I believe David Dennis. But he and his friends, they play a lot of doubles, and one of his strengths is that if he's within 70 feet, he's going to hit metal. Like, it's almost always going to draw some form of metal, whether it's the pole, the cage, the band, chains, what it may not be. But the beauty of that is that they so rarely end up 2-putting or 3-putting, because one person's going to throw his putt and it's going to be wherever it is, and then like he's going to come up behind them and make sure that they're next to the basket, basically. So it is such a, even if you miss those longer putts, making sure that it's only one extra stroke to get in is in theory the same as someone being at 20 feet, not knowing how to putt, missing the putt, and also having to tap it in. It's like, yeah.
Well, and not to stick on this forever, but it's something I'm realizing this year as we're doing like the Breaking Brad series. Like, I've got to spend some time really figuring out my putting again, because like looking at someone like Clayton here, who works here with us, and he's very high ranked in college disc golf, and if him and I play Timbrook, like I can pretty much get relatively close to where he's throwing. I mean, our like off the tee is not that far away, but like if he's within 40 feet, he's making it like 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times. And he's confident. He steps up, it's like boom, drains the putt, moves on, and it's a difference between me shooting 2 or 3 under and him shooting 12 or 13 under. Is he's just banging all those putts, and it's like we're not that far off. The thing that's separating us by a huge margin is putting accuracy and confidence.
I would definitely have to say that's about the same for me. Just anytime I go out, it's one of those things where maybe 3 out of 10 times I go out, I'm feeling pretty confident with my putting. And then the other 7 is just like, I don't feel so comfortable.
Yeah.
Which I kind of need to do the same. I don't really have, I need to really kind of more define a putting style and kind of stick with it, and instead of jumping around here and there, and it doesn't work out very well.
And there's nothing wrong with, I would say there's nothing wrong with having the jump around, because then your putting toolbox is developed. So that way, since you've messed around with a bunch of different putts, if you find yourself in a weird scenario I agree, picking a primary putt style, really helpful, because it's like, this is what I do kind of a deal.
Gives you a nice base.
Consistency there. Yeah, exactly. But then there's other moments where you're going to step up and you're going to be like, all right, cool. I decided to go with a more spinny putt, but there is a massive drop off behind the basket. All right, cool. I might want to go to more of a push style and kind of loft it up like a grandma putt and like see how it drops in, things like that. So having that toolbox developed, that's one thing that I'd be curious in the comments to hear. When you guys play doubles, this is where I see this come the most, and then we can move on to the bag. Is how often, like, do either of you, like Brad or Todd, do you play doubles like on a regular basis, or how often would you say you get to play doubles?
Not very often.
Recreationally. Yeah.
Okay. So then I think this will definitely be true in that case then. So as someone who didn't play doubles a lot, like I was only playing doubles like once or twice a year for an event my friends and I had. certain partner groups, we would end up and would be like, all right, we're 40 feet away from the basket. How about you go ahead and give it a run, and I'll see what yours does, and then I'll adjust accordingly. And so I was like, all right, cool. So the first person would throw his putt, and then he would like Jasper it straight into the cage. And he's like, oh, okay, it's right there. Sick. Go ahead, give it a full run, go for it. And I would be like, all right, sick. I'm running it hard. And I would go to throw it, and I would change literally nothing about my putt, except in my heart, I wanted to make it more. And in that world, I was like, oh, I'm running it. Like that's what I'm doing. Whereas when you develop that toolbox, you're like, okay, I got like a flick putt. I have like a little Annie flick putt. I have a thumber. I have all these different, I have a hard spin putt, things like that. Whereas now when I run it, I can end up 30, 40 feet past, because it's like I'm giving it such a solid chance to get up there, depending on how far away I am, things like that. So I think that developing that toolbox, super, super helpful. So even in those double scenarios, your running it is actually doing something different is helpful.
Right. Yeah.
So Todd, looking at your bag, man, I think that, like, what kind of bag do you carry?
As far as the Atlas.
Yeah, like the actual bag. Okay, you got a Pioneer?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, awesome. I would hope so, being friends with Brad, but I didn't want to assume anything here. And if not, I was going to be like, great opportunity to plug. I mean, checking out the Pioneer. But yeah, so looking at it, I like the disc count that you have in your bag. I think it is a very healthy number. I mean, you're sitting at what, like 20?
20 or 21, which definitely took a long time to get there, because you always feel like, I mean, at first I think I had like 28 discs I'm going out there with, and I'm never using half of them. It's like, but you're always just like, oh, if I end up in that one situation, I might need this disc. And it's like that situation never happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I could not agree more, sir. Like it's crazy how much we can convince ourselves into this disc works. And then I wonder how many other times, not only do we convince ourselves this disc works, but we almost throw it more often just to even tell ourselves, oh, that's why it's here. Like, it's definitely not the situation for this disc, but I'm going to go for it. So looking at it, if there's one thing that I noticed right off the bat, it is, and this could be indicative of like the style of courses you're playing and things like that. But with 20 discs in your bag, we'll say 19 because the putting putter is in there. And so it depends on if you're throwing it or not, you may be throwing it, but you, of that, 13 of them are fairway drivers or faster. So very high on the top end speed here. So we ended up recommending mid ranges. But I want to talk about, let's start at the top, Brad, if that works for you, and we'll work our way down. The Thrasher and the Mentor seem like they could accomplish very similar things. What do they do differently for you?
Really, the Mentor, honestly, that's almost one of those discs that kind of just has stayed in there, that I don't really pull out that often. Because I feel really comfortable with the Thrasher. Again, going kind of back to what we were just talking about, like there's probably at least 5 discs in there that I just very rarely use. And honestly, it's almost kind of in there just because it fills up space. And just in case, like I will say I keep a couple discs like the Mentor in there that like I don't really have a whole lot of care for that as much, if that makes sense. So like if I come up on a hole and I'm like, there's a good potential I could lose this disc, I'm going to throw that one versus the one that I'm like, I don't want to part with that disc.
Yeah. Okay. It's almost like a filler water. I think water disc is definitely something that a lot of people can relate to.
It's a kamikaze disc. You just send it.
Exactly. If I lose it in the water, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If I lose some of the other ones in there like I have before, I will spend weeks until I find it.
Okay. I'm excited to. Okay, so is the Thrasher one of those that it's definitely on the like I'm hunting for that disc regardless of what happens to it?
Yeah, but I definitely have a couple other discs in there that I'm like, I really would hate to see me not be able to play with this disc.
Okay. So of the drivers, I see the Grace. It's a newer run of Grace. I think those were like mid to late last year.
Yeah, that one I'm still kind of, I just put that in my bag towards the end of the last season. So I'm still kind of figuring it out a little bit. And so I haven't got to play with it a whole lot to really know whether or not I'm going to keep it in there or not.
Okay.
And if I recall, Todd, the Thrasher is one of the first discs you really loved for forehand. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like I was throwing Thrashers at the time. I think I had you try a few.
I'm pretty sure it's the one that you bought me when I came to Virginia, though, first time.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Because those Big Z Thrashers have a nice flip up, and you do have like a Hyzer forehand, or a Hyzer release forehand. So it was nice flip up, give him a little bit of turn, and it still was fading for him at that time. So I don't know.
Oh, it's a pretty reliable disc. That's definitely one of my favorites.
Okay. Yeah, I'm here for that. And I think that in the Big Z as well, I would be lying if I said I've like thrown Thrashers in every single plastic that they're out there, because I think the Thrasher is definitely a good flagship mold for Discraft. So Brad, is someone who threw Thrashers, how does the Big Z compare to, like, let's say like a stock ESP?
So I didn't really throw Big Z Thrashers. I was always throwing Z. Like I just really like the Z because the Z had a little extra bite. My experience with Big Z is it has a little more flip out the gate. It does, again, I've really thrown Big Z Vultures. It's really the only, and Buzzes. Those are the really only Big Z I threw. It seemed like they had a little more flip out the gate to them, but they kind of stayed that way a little longer. They didn't really beat in super fast.
Okay. So speaking of vultures, you've got a titanium vulture that looks like a sticker was on it for a long time.
No, just one of the, I don't know why manufacturers put stickers on there that don't come off easy. It's really frustrating and annoying because it bugs the crap out of me. And then it got dirt on there, and it's like, well, do you really want to sit there and rub the crap out of the disc? And so that's another one that's kind of a newer one that I put in my bag there towards the last couple months of the last season. I would say it's probably about the same as the Grace there. I haven't had a ton of time with it yet, but so far seems to be a pretty solid disc.
Okay. Now we mentioned a beast that you had lost that you really loved. You've got a glow beast in there, and I think that the glow beast, such a, like, I'm not going to say a rare disc, but it's definitely one that you're not going to find in people's bags very often. So what does your beast do for you?
The beast and I have a very interesting relationship because that's the very first disc I ever bought. And so that first time I went out, if nobody's ever thrown the beast before, it can definitely be kind of crazy, especially when you're first starting out. So I honestly hated that disc for the longest time because I didn't know how to throw it. And once I finally learned how to throw that thing, I freaking love it. I mean, I can use it to do a crazy flip up around a tree, or I can really let loose with it and kind of get to do a nice long S curve. And it's probably one of the farthest throwing discs that I have, or that I can throw. And oddly, it's specifically the glow plastic. After I lost the first one, that was nice and beat in, I tried a couple different versions of the beast, and the glow plastic is the only one I've been able to, it's the only one I've liked. The other ones just did not have the same flight to it for whatever reason. So it took me a little while to find the glow plastic again.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's definitely a less popular run of them for sure. Did you try, you mentioned like they didn't fly the same. So are you looking for it to have like easy S movement, but it's still coming out of it? Or like what's the shot shape that you're really most often using the Beast for?
Well, I'd say I use it for two big things. I mean, it's also kind of one of those like utility disc where kind of going back to where I first started playing with that disc and throwing it wrong kind of actually helped me because I was able to get that big turn on it without it going very far. But I'd say most of the time anymore now, it's just I get a nice long S curve out of it, really.
Okay.
Robbie, staying on the Beast for a second, and I've had a little experience with the Beast because both of my sons threw them for a long time, and both Blizzard and like G-Star Plastic. Is the Beast like a little bit more overstable, like in like a Star or Champ Plastic than one would expect, or what's your experience with the Beast?
In a Star or a Champ, for sure. I would say like, because of the flight numbers 10, 5, -2, 2, you're most often going to think that this is going to be like, if you throw it on Annie, it's going to have a lot of turn to it, and then it's still going to come back a little at the end. I think where the Beast surprises most people is the fact that 10 speed, I think, is a very accurate number. Like the threshold to get the Beast to fly how it's supposed to fly does require a decent amount of spin and power put into the disc just because it is a driver. And so,
yeah, you definitely got to have a little bit behind it to get it to fly like that.
Yeah. And so people will look at like, because the Beast comes in the starter set, the DX Beast, I would say flies like a more like a 9 speed or even an 8 speed, depending on the arm, especially after it hits a tree for the first time. It's going to be an 8 speed. Like that threshold is going to go down dramatically. But yeah, I would definitely say that it flies a lot more for most people, especially in premium plastics, like a 10.5 -1.2. I would in fact be shocked because Innova is pretty good about making sure the flight numbers change on their drivers. I would be shocked if the Halo Beasts that are out aren't actually listed as like 10.4 -1.2.
I still think they're listed as is, and that's what is making me say that, Robbie, is because I have thrown the Halo, and there's some chunk to that. Like that is like that is some beef for a 10 speed. But anyway, I was just curious because I mean I'm sure others have tried Beasts out there and had like kind of a similar experience probably to Todd, where like the plastics really do have a wide range of flight in this particular mold. So
yeah, definitely, because the glow plastic is definitely a little, on that one at least, it's a little more stiff, which I kind of like because I can really kind of whip the disc around. And sometimes I like that little bit harder plastic like that.
Yeah. Innova especially, I would say if you go to the flat, like the older companies, Innova and Discraft, because certain molds have been around for so long, there is just you can find a Buzz that has any flight you're looking for. You can find a Beast of Valkyrie. You can find a Destroyer. Like I think I'm not trying to steal the Swanky guy's thunder, but I know a story they love about the Destroyer is that they were playing with a guy for his first time. He was like pretty new, and so they were playing with him for the first time, and he borrowed one of their discs, and they were like, "Oh, how does it fly?" And they were like, "Oh, like a more beat-in Destroyer." And he goes, "Oh, so it's a roller disc." And they looked at him like, no, not at all. Like it's a beat. It's going to easy. Hyzer flip is still going to fade. And he was like, no, man, a Destroyer flips. Why? I got one in my bag. And he pulls out, and it was a DX Destroyer that had been chewed up and mangled by a dog. And like, that's his mindset of what a Destroyer does. And so, all right, cool. So yeah, I think that in Todd, your case, like the Beast is this glow beast. That's how it flies. That's what I expect out of it. And then you go grab a Champion Beast, and you're like,
totally different.
Yeah,
totally different. Because I tried to branch out and try the other molds when I lost that first one, and I was like, man, it is just not the same. This sucks. And then I finally ended up just finding the glow plastic again, I'm like, okay, it's the glow plastic.
Yeah, I hear that. Okay, sick. All right, we got caught up on the beats for a little bit, so we're gonna fly through the middle part right there. Raptor. I can assume what the Raptor does in terms of like just really overstable, forehand reliable disc. It's moving left on a backhand, right on a forehand.
Pretty consistently.
So the intriguing part to me is you've got this like 9-speed war going on. Now, the Retro Saint is the one that I'm immediately looking at going, I feel like it probably doesn't fly like the other two just because I know Retro is a base plastic. Is it flippier than the other two?
That one flies pretty straight for whatever reason, the way I throw. And believe it or not, I actually really like the Retro plastic. It's kind of got that harder plastic feel to it. And for whatever reason, it feels good in my hand, and the release feels really good on those.
Am I crazy in thinking that like that Beast and that Saint probably feel somewhat similar? Or is the Glow Beast, is it still pretty slick like premium plastic?
I would say those two probably feel kind of similar. It definitely almost kind of has like a inherent grip to it in a sense, I guess. If that it's not slick by any means, no.
Yeah. It's like so often people will mix in Glow with like other plastics. They'll be like, this is Champion Glow or this is Star Glow, things like that. And so it's pretty rare to find like just the Glow polymer. I don't know if that's the right word. I'm not trying to sound smart, people. But there's some Glow component that when it's just straight Glow. Yeah, that's fascinating. Okay, so Undertaker and the Tesla, is there a difference between the two, or is one new to the bag? What's the vibe there?
It's kind of one of those ones too where the Tesla gets used a lot less. And it was newer to my bag before the other. And it was it's another one of those ones that's kind of in there, but doesn't necessarily have to be in there per se. I've definitely got a handful of discs like that for sure.
Yeah, and that's totally fine. So shifting down, you've got the T-Bird 3, the Athena, and the Explorer. What's kind of the difference between those?
The Athena is another one that I added in there towards the end of last year. The Explorer is just another one where it's just a nice, pretty straight flying disc, which is also another one that, like, if I lost the Explorer, I'm not really going to be all that upset about. However, the T-Bird 3, that is probably the one disc in my bag that I would go through hell and back to find again, which I have before. It was one of my first discs. I've gotten 2 hole-in-ones with that disc. And I don't know what it is about that thing, but it just feels good. I know and it's definitely beat in for sure, but still flies super consistent. I have a lot of control with that one.
I would say you talked about like it's cold right now when the snow and all that clears. That is, of looking at your bag, the disc I would be most afraid to throw in colder temperatures is that T-Bird 3.
Yeah, it doesn't get thrown around water normally or anything like that, just because, again, I lost it took my dad out disc golfing for the first time, which was interesting. And it was one of the last ones I was just thrown at a practice hole, and it slipped out of my hand and went right into the woods. And I'd say total, I spent every bit of 10 hours until I finally found it wedged in between 2 logs there, and just so happened to catch a glare off of it one day. I was like, oh, I was so mad when I lost that thing. But yeah, glad to have it back finally.
Yeah, if you go and watch on Foundation's main channel, it was Trevor versus the editors, and Connor pulls out this Champion Panther, and he's looking at it, and he's like, "Here you go, I'm gonna throw it," and he throws it on a specific hole. I'm not gonna like spoil it or anything, what hole it is, so you can tune in, but it explodes. Like it hits a tree, and literally the disc just explodes. And I say that because that plastic is what your T-Bird 3 is in. So Innova, older Innova Champion, an older Innova CT, which is what Champion was before it was Champion. Like it is just known for that. Of it gets cold and it touches a tree and it just explodes.
Definitely glad to know that, because that would be very devastating. I'm not even gonna lie. To see that thing blow up in front of me would be really heart-wrenching.
Yeah, so that's why I say don't throw it in the cold. Like even if you're like, oh, there's not water, but I'm just playing in the woods. Nope. Do not throw that disc. A great disc to lean into would be the Rhythm. If you're throwing in the woods, which you have in your bag, is the Rhythm newer in the bag towards the end of the season as well?
About midway through last season, and I really, really fell in love with that disc because that's one that I can throw backhand and get a natural curve to the right.
Okay.
So it's almost like throwing a forehand in a sense, but I don't have to throw it forehand. I can get it to do the exact same thing.
Yeah. No, I think as a music guy, for those of you who are listening to the audio version, you won't get to see the awesome background that Todd has behind him of some guitars and his drum kit and things like that. So,
it was a very fitting disc for sure, which was really thematic. The reason why I bought it to begin with, because I was like, oh, it's got a drummer on it. I'll do that. And then turns out I liked it. Yeah.
See, as also a drummer, I really wanted to like the Rhythm, and I just didn't. It just was not. It was not for me, and I was very sad. Very sad.
I mean, it's no stink. I'll just say that. But
it's no stink.
Okay, so we're gonna jump mid ranges real fast. We're gonna talk putters. We'll zoom through the putters because thankfully you only have 3 putters in the back. So
that's been a hard one to get down because I like throwing putters too a lot.
Okay, so what did the 3 putters do for you?
So the Nomad is probably the one I'm the most comfortable with. Really like that one. I don't normally throw that one. I mean, I can throw that one and get a good throw on it, but it's normally my main putter. The orange one, the Echo, that's a newer ad, as well as my other putter. Bradley got me onto the other main putter I'm using. It's a lot heavier than the Nomad, so I'm still
the new Kristen Pure. That Kristen Pure.
Okay.
The Orbit Kristen Pure.
Which, just saying, as a fan of wolves and that kind of stuff, what an awesome line of discs. They are all pretty sweet looking.
Yeah. Kristen's stamp design is killing it.
Yeah. But that one I'm starting to lean towards a little bit more that I get used to it, because I do like that kind of like heavy disc sometimes for putting.
He was a Judge guy before.
Okay.
Correct? You threw Judge a lot.
Yeah.
And then you kind of found the Nomad. Yeah,
because I found an old Judge from one of the Play Again Sports, and it was the real flexible plastic. Can't even remember which one it was now, but and that was just kind of one I leaned on at first. And I've definitely made a lot of jumps around in putters, and those 2 are kind of the ones I've kind of started leaning towards more. But the Nomad definitely is one of my go-tos.
Are you throwing any of those off the tee, Todd, or are you just really trying to figure out which one you like for putting?
Mostly just putting, especially, considering that's definitely the area of my game that I would say definitely could use the most work, just in consistency. So I've been really trying to make sure I'm not throwing those off the tee and beating the crap out of them. But the Nomad, I feel pretty comfortable. There's a couple downhill holes on a course here locally I play on that I'll use one of my putters thrown off the tee there a lot.
And then you have the zone all the way over there. I mean, is that your approach disc, your forehand approach disc, or are you throwing it backhand? What are you doing with that?
Those are normally forehand. The zone and the buzz are those two are just. I mean, it's hard to beat those two discs, and especially the buzz. I mean, I can really get the buzz out there pretty far if I want to.
And yours is the Buzz SS specifically. So
yeah,
do you get some Hyzer flip to flat with that, or does it turn for you at all, or is it pretty straight?
It has a little bit of turn towards the end on it, which is really kind of the difference I have with the zone and the buzz. Is just one for me turns a little bit more, a little sharper than the other.
Yeah.
But man, the buzz that Buzz SS feels good coming in your hand, coming out, and just a pretty comfortable disc overall.
Awesome. Yeah, and speaking of the buzz, Robbie, we prefaced the episode by saying we're talking about mid ranges today, which I'm really interested. It's really interesting, just some of your feedback on the discs that you like and some of the feel that you like, Todd, on the discs that I threw today. Robbie recommended after seeing your bag that I throw a couple overstable mid ranges. So have the Pyro here. Prism Pyro, and then I actually have a Exo Hard Method. So that will be an interesting. And I'm sorry, Robbie, I cut you off for a second.
Oh no, you're good. I was just because I was trying to get there as well. The one disc that I'm most curious about is the Claymore, which is the like really colorful wolf disc you have. That Claymore, how does it fly for you? Because based on the flight numbers, I've always heard it that and by always heard, I've seen firsthand that is not usually a good representation of how it actually flies.
That was a pretty straight flying disc for me. Depending on how I throw it, it can have a little bit of a turn to it at the end, but that one I've really fallen in love with. And actually, I think the second time out with it, ended up getting a hole in one with that one.
Come on.
So it's kind of hard to take that one out of the bag, especially for now. But yeah, no, it's another really, really comfortable, stable disc.
Okay. So not as much turn as, let's say, the Buzz SS is going to have, but still straight-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Sick. Well, then, yeah, I think these are going to be nice alternatives. In theory, I'm thinking between the zone all the way over to further flying zones would be my thought and dream. But Brad, so you took both of these out. Have you thrown either of these before?
Thrown the Pyro before. It's been a while since I threw the Pyro, and then maybe I've thrown the Method too. I might have thrown both of these.
Okay.
But I recall the Pyro, but not really the Method.
So hand feel wise, how do they feel?
So hand feel wise, the Pyro just feels incredible in the hand, even though it has like that micro bead. It's actually not even a micro bead. Maybe it has like almost a micro bead on the bottom. This feels pretty comfortable. The Method does have a micro bead on the bottom, and obviously I was throwing in 17-degree weather this morning when I was throwing these, and the Method was a lot easier to keep in my hand. It does have some grip to it. Obviously, it's Exo Hard, so it is a little bit more firm versus the Pyro. But they both feel pretty good for their own, I guess, particular reasons why they are supposed to be the way that they are.
Okay. So you took them out. I think the Pyro, some people have to readjust their understanding of the Pyro because the Pyro was popular amongst gyronauts early on. And Todd, you have some gyro in your bag, so this is not going to be like strange, unfamiliar territory, which is nice. Because if this was going to be your first gyro disc, I would never have suggested putting the Pyro in at all, because I think people look at how Simon throws a Pyro and they're like, oh, it's just like a little beefier Buzz. Nope. Interesting. I don't think that's true at all, but that's what people try to claim, is that it like super because they watch Simon throw it. So Brad, how did it fly for you?
Yeah, it's actually it's kind of a testament for how far like I've come, because when I threw it the first time, it was like complete beef. I couldn't even handle it. It would barely, it was just dumping out of my hand. Um, it was definitely, it's definitely one of those discs that because I'm throwing on baby Hyzer, so it like kind of holds that. It's like as the disc, it holds that Hyzer line the whole time, but as the disc slows down, it like really, really dumps at the end. But it's like if you throw it hard, it will actually have a slow pan until the end of the flight, then it has the dump. Or if you give it like a really aggressive Hyzer angle, it will just have that huge like dumping Hyzer line. But if you, and I threw them on some Annie and stuff too, and like if you really like, you can really, it is flexible as far as like the shots you could throw with it. It's not just like a, hey, this is just like a beefcake disc, I just need to like throw something, has to get hard left. You can actually like manipulate it a little bit more than I remember to get it where it's going. But it does, I mean, it does have a considerable amount of fade to it, as you would expect. It's definitely not like a flip up straight with a little bit of like a beefier buzz. It's not that, at least not for me. Um, the and I guess as far as the method is concerned, very similar. I mean, I threw these discs. I mean, pretty similar. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of difference. I will say that um the method maybe had a little bit more beef to it, which kind of surprised me. But I think that's nice because I know like in this plastic it is going to beat in a little bit, so you're going to have like it'll still be beefy even after you beat it in. And even if I was giving an Annie line, the Pyro seemed to want to take the Annie line a little bit more than the method at times. But I do feel like, and maybe this makes sense, maybe it doesn't, but I do feel like the method was more consistent even when my throws were less consistent. I do feel like the Pyro with the gyro like rim, I really had to make sure I had the appropriate amount of spin on it, or it was like not the same flight every time. So like there was less margin for error with the Pyro.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. So looking at this bag, and I think the plastic type could have a real influence on this.
Right.
What are you thinking could better suit Todd?
So just from a couple things that Todd said. Number one, you're talking about you excuse me, you tend to really like grippier base plastic. So out the gate, I'm like method seems like the winner here. I know you like to throw a lot of forehands, and again, we don't ever like to recommend a disc. It's just like a one shot kind of disc. I feel like the method when I was throwing forehands, I was definitely throwing the method better on forehand. It just has a little more depth to it, so you really feel like you can get like the meat of your hands on it. At least for me, I know you have larger hands, Todd, so I think that would be even like more prevalent. I'm feeling them again just to make sure, but yes, there's some more room there. Um, I also think the battle you're having, and this reminds me a lot of my bag, like the battle you're having in your fairway and driver categories is because you're really not seeing a ton of difference in a lot of them because they're like higher speeds and things. But where you really start to see the difference, small incremental differences in discs, at least I started to, were in my putters and my mid ranges when I really started working on those. And I think you need like, um, you're going to find probably you're going to throw your mid ranges as far, if not farther, than some of your drivers, and you're going to be able to like they're going to be a little bit more reliable and predictable for you versus like, oh, I slightly missed through my vulture or my undertaker, and there's a huge difference. Whereas like your mid ranges, you're going to be able to start like building that portion of your bag and then start taking those principles upward into your like fairway drivers, which is kind of the route that I took. So, and I know, and I played one of those courses with you. There are a lot of, I think we play what, Veterans Park, Todd?
Yeah. Yep.
And that course, there's a lot of like, it's a nice course, but there's a lot of like, all right, this hole is right to left. This hole is left to right. This hole is left to
Yeah,
right.
you get
This
a
hole
lot.
is right to left.
You get a lot of that at that course, for sure.
So, but I think this will probably give you an opportunity to feel like, and I felt this with the Bobcat a long time ago, and I'm really feeling it with the Quake now. I'm really liking the Quake because with a mid range, I know I can match the speed of that disc, and you're really feeling like, okay, I have an overstable disc, but I can really manipulate it to throw a bunch of different shots, and I can really lean into it. And maybe I need to go straight a lot farther and then have a lot of fade. And like I think this is going to probably give you some opportunity to start messing around with that, which I think is going to be very helpful. And like I know a lot of times with wood shots where it's like, okay, it's kind of a tunnel, but it really needs to get left at the end. It's really nice to have that overstable disc is maybe beating a little bit, that you can rely on it to go straight and you can throw it farther, but really have that beef at the end to get to the hole and give yourself like scoring opportunity. And that's what I'm going to recommend the method because of that. I think, Robbie, is where I'm kind of leaning, if you agree.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that like as soon as you said XL hard, I was like, this disc is going to have to fly pretty horrifically for it not to be the winner here in this situation. So, Todd, have you ever thrown the method before?
I have not. No.
Okay. We were also, when I texted Brad about it, I was like, how about like a little relevant decision, because we've got Eagle McMahon just left Discmania to go to MVP, and then Gannon just joined from Prodigy to Discmania, and in one of his most recent videos being on the team, Gannon was like, the method might be the most underrated disc in the Discmania lineup. So there you go. You're jumping in on the trend the week of it. So you're going to be one of the front runners getting to be there with a method. So trendsetter, not a follower here. So
yeah, because it would definitely be nice to have that disc that, again, with some of those like drivers, I can get it to go out, but just the bounce and everything you get when it fades left, it's like, oh, it was a great shot if it would have stuck, and instead now it just glanced out to the left about 20 feet into the woods.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's when Connor was doing the Break 86 series. That's where it was like, we need to find you a disc that goes straight and then sits. Because if you're throwing distance drivers to try to throw these lines, like you're going to end up in the woods all the time.
Yep. It's going to skip and hit and go somewhere that you don't want it to.
Absolutely. 20 or 30 feet left or right gets real tough in the woods. So,
yep.
Todd, we appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks for being part of it. And we'll get you this method in the mail and hopefully have you on for a future episode so we can hear how it flies.
Definitely sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We did it. Another one.
I'll send another one. Yeah, no, always fun to bring on people that are friends outside of the disc golf world, especially getting to hear the story of a lot of, it feels like he's been playing for a few years, but until the end of last year, very consistent in like, this is what's in the bag and this is what I'm throwing. Like, not so deep into the sport to be shifting the bag around all the time. It's kind of a fun challenge / moment to see that, like, okay, he just learned some discs.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. And I envy that a little bit, because I'm like, I think there's just like some, like he was talking to us off air and he's like, some days when I go out and play and I get a couple holes in and it's not my day, I'm like, I'm done. I'm going home. Or he's like, I'll go practice putting a little bit, or I'll just go home. And I'm like, I'm just too stubborn for that. It's probably a pride thing. I'm like, I got to finish, and I'm just going to torture myself for like 16 more holes, even though I'm having a terrible day. So there's a beauty to the simplicity of the disc golf that Todd and I think a lot of other people have, and I'm a little jealous of it. I'm a gearhead. I just go too deep into it. But you saw it. Todd is too, and he is getting there. And I think this mid-range thing is going to open up a whole nother like thought process for him.
Yeah, and when he gets further into it and he's diving in all those mid ranges and things like that, he's going to need a place to store the ones that aren't landing there, which is a great time to talk about the sponsor of What's New in the Warehouse, which is Hyzer Disc Racks. Hyzer Disc Racks, your premium storage solution of how to store your discs, y'all. It's a beautiful piece of furniture. They come in a modular unit that holds so many discs.
Yeah, way more than you think.
Like we've got another set of racks on its way to our house right now, thanks to Foundation and Hyzer Disc Racks. And my wife is just like licking her chops, ready to see some of the boxes that I've got stored up. She's like, oh, and that second set of racks shows up. there's no way all these don't fit on that rack, because I eliminated like 3 different boxes of stuff just sitting there based on getting my first set of Hyzer racks, and there's not discs on the floor anymore, things like that. So really, really appreciate it. Another cool feature that we don't talk about as often that they are selling, it's a new product, is the topper for them.
That was a game changer for me. Like,
it's insane. It's so cool.
I like trinkets, and I can put all my trinkets on top. And like cool things people have made me, minis. I've not won any trophies. If you've won some trophies, you can put them on top of there.
That is what we are down our basement. When we bought the house, our basement is what basically my wife and I both looked at, and she was like, it's our library. Because catch this, Brad, the people that owned the house before us, the wife was a librarian and the husband was a pastor.
Disc golfer. Oh, okay. Close.
So when we bought the house 6 years ago, I wasn't a full-time professional disc golfer either. So, so like we bought the house from us in like 25 years.
That's fine.
And great. For his like 40th birthday, his wife, or for her 40th birthday, he bought her like built-in bookshelves downstairs.
That's awesome.
And so the whole basement is like these really beautiful bookshelves, and I have overtaken basically the whole basement. And so, so it just doesn't look that great. So all my trophies all my philosophy textbooks were sitting on a shelf. And I was like, well, this is one of the few shelves that I just had stuff on. So I just kept throwing trophies on there. And now it's all moved over to the Hyzer disc rack. So really, really beautiful. We are so grateful for that sponsor. And y'all, if you haven't checked it out, once again, they're modular. So there's no like, you can start with one, see if you like it, see if you love it, store accordingly. And then when you decide to go for more, they just stack. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah. And listen, they're an Illinois company. It's just Shannon, one dude. He's a disc golfer. And again, talking to him, he just loves disc golf. He wanted to just do something good for disc golf. And he really did. I mean, in my opinion, I've tried several other storage solutions. This is the best one, hands down. Again, it is an investment. I understand that. That's why it's beautiful. That's modular. Another thing that's not talked about a lot too, Robbie, is like, number one, you can customize everything however you want. I have a foundation one. I have a in the bag one. Robbie's have the Robbie C logo on them. And also they have like these little like hooks or whatever dowels that come out where you can hang like towels and hats on. They have little separators inside of the rack that you can separate your collection into manufacturers or special whatever. And then they have clips that hang on the end of them so you can even hang your bag on them.
Yeah.
He's really thought of everything. And again, everything's made in the US. It's just Shannon. He did it. And Shannon was generous enough to give us a coupon code. So just in the bag, all lowercase, it's info's in the description, but go there and get 10% off your entire order today. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Hyzer Disc Racks. You're incredible. And I hope you all check them out. Give them a chance.
Yeah. So when they check them out though, they're going to need to fill them. So Brad will do in the warehouse.
Yeah. So, okay, we have some stuff, guys. It's becoming that time of the year. I'm getting hit up by all the manufacturers on a lot of cool stuff. I do want to shout out really quick our subscription box. They're sold out right now. Things happen. People will like their subscriptions like don't renew, or people have to cancel for one reason or another. So that number is always fluctuating. Typically it's sold out, but you may at the end of the month, like the last couple of days, if you really want to treat yourself, that's a great way to do so. You might be able to snag one at the end of the month, the last couple of days. This month's box is the Connor box. So, I mean, spoilers out. And you don't get, typically, it's not ever promised, but we try to do something like a special disc. But not only are they special discs, they are all three are custom this month. And one of them, shout out Gateway, because I contacted Gateway and they worked with me to blend the exact plastic, the exact color of Connor's famous Shaman. So
infamous Shaman.
Infamous. Let's just.
It will always be remembered.
Okay, I got to give the people that are watching on video a cheat. I see one sitting right over here. You tell them we got some Trash Panda stuff coming up too. Let me grab this, Robbie.
Yeah, so Trash Panda, we got ice inner cores, which as someone who has gotten to feel when you think ice plastic, traditionally you're going to go to like a Trilogy or something like that for ice, but Trash Panda new inner cores they're a clear inner core, and this clear plastic is so nice. It has like a good amount of grip to it, but you still get that classic inner core flight out of it. I cannot wait for standard weight dunes to come in the ice.
Yeah, so we have the ice inner cores. We did restock dunes. We have Blurple and the salmon, fresh caught salmon, which we haven't had before, and we restocked some minis as well as the premium inner cores. So all of that is being restocked and will be available to you now. All right, here's the first look. I've not shared this with anybody. The guys have not shared this with anybody. Here's the first look. Are we ready? Look at that.
It's so good, dude.
Look at that. I mean, is that my brother? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've thrown it. It's in the bag. Like you probably see if you look at my in the bag on Disc RPM. I just have an orange shaman because I didn't want to put it. I didn't want to put the picture yet. I didn't want to spoil it for everybody. But I'll be adding that. So yeah, subscription box. Make sure you check it out next month. The next 2 months are February and March are going to be all custom discs as well. So we're just like hammering it. We're just coming out the gate hot. Also, we've had all the announcements. Robbie alluded to it this week. We have pre-orders up for the Eagle McMahon Prism Envy, which I am so excited about that disc. That is just like my dream right there. It has a beautiful bird on it, which we know that I love. So excited about that. We do have a handful of those left, so make sure you check out those. Also, the Pixel in both Electron Soft, Electron Firm, and the Special Edition Pixel. There's pre-orders up for all of those. So make sure you check those out. We're also just adding a few odd and end discs up as well. That we're doing all of our inventory count. It's been like a crazy couple weeks, but we found some like cool molds that weren't necessarily in inventory, or we had them set aside. I mean, there's some Kristen Tatar Grand Slam Explorers that never went up, so those are going to be going up. So again, recently restocked is always your best friend. Again, help the guys out. Tour Life and Grip Locked are in competition right now to see who can sell the most merch, because they're both like our merch is the best. No, our merch is the best. So if you're a fan of one of those shows, make sure you go over. There's hats, there's shirts, there's sweatshirts. Make sure that you check all those out too. I think Grip Lock's winning right now, and Brody is not very happy about it. So
big push coming tonight.
Yeah, maybe if you're Tour Life people, just saying, help your boy out. So, but hey, if you get one of those hoodies and you're like, man, it's cold season, but it's spring, and man, I need to like wear this in the morning, my morning round, and then I get the whole 9. I'm like, a little warm, and you take it off. Well, hey, it's not only discs that are good. If your sweatshirt's good and you wear it and you want to keep it with you, you keep it in the bag too.
Ooh,
we'll see you all.
What a love.
Well, I know. I went there. We'll see y'all next week.